Chinese experts reportedly found a new coronavirus.
Chinese health authorities are still working to identify the virus behind a pneumonia outbreak.
The World Health Organization has officially named the new coronavirus Covid-19.
Now to growing concerns about the deadly coronavirus officially hitting the U.S.
Covid-19 has begun spreading faster outside China. The virus has now reached every continent except Antarctica.
It's going to disappear. One day it's like a miracle. It will disappear.
The number of coronavirus cases here in the U.S. now tops 1,000.
It's the United States just passed 1,000 deaths.
And I said, I feel like y'all just sent me home to die.
I am officially declaring a national emergency.
Our beaches are safer than being cooped up at home.
The USNS Comfort, which we've been monitoring, coming into New York Harbor.
If I get corona, I get corona. At the end of the day, I'm not going to let it stop me from partying.
As a part of that reopening, what we are starting to see is that the number of positive cases is actually starting to spike.
The number of confirmed cases of COVID-19 in the U.S. now tops 83,000, more than have been recorded in China or Italy.
Intense. We've had a bunch of people die in a very short period of time.
A grim milestone has just been passed here, the death toll exceeding 10,000.
The procession of bodies being wheeled out of the hospitals where they spent their last hours.
It's uncharted territory.
35,000!
They're fighting a war here and they're losing.
At worst case scenario, it could be the flu.
We don't have immunity to this virus. It's a new virus.
The number of deaths in the United States has now reached a stunning 50,000.
This is bad. People are dying.
I see the disinfectant that knocks it out in a minute. Injection inside or almost a cleaning, because you see it gets in the lungs and it does a tremendous number of lungs.
This is a mass grave being dug for coronavirus victims.
There are now over 1 million confirmed cases of the coronavirus in our United States.
Well, this is a war zone. It's a medical war zone.
The number of deaths here in the United States has just crossed 100,000.
100,000. And 100,000.
100,000 lives have now been lost to this virus.
100,000 lives have been lost to the coronavirus nationwide.
Coronavirus.
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 Coronavirus doesn't get any more critical than this.
It does not.
Look, I know that you know that there's a pandemic going on. It's affected many people's lives, and if you watch the news even once a day, you know all the details. So I'm not going to go into details. But I am going to give you a recap of what's been going on in the U.S. and how the U.S. has handled the pandemic. 2020 is just a little bit past halfway through the year, and the world has already been turned upside down. The virus, known as COVID-19, has ravaged the world, and as of recording this video, there are over 20 million reported cases and almost 740,000 dead worldwide. In America alone, there are almost 5.4 million reported cases and almost 164,000 deaths. To put this into perspective, this is more American lives lost in World War I, the wars in Vietnam, Korea, Iraq, and Afghanistan combined. Often, the virus is played down and compared to the flu, which kills about 35,000 Americans annually. This is much worse. Even so, these numbers are far from accurate, as the US was ill-prepared for a pandemic of this magnitude and has lacked tests to properly test people so that we can get an accurate amount of data. Secondary effects of the coronavirus have been detrimental for America, as the country has been forced to shut down. Businesses cannot open, meaning closures and layoffs. The stock market is in shambles, Americans are being evicted in mass numbers, and worst of all, the loss of life. For the 20th week in a row, over 1 million Americans have filed for unemployment benefits, the highest number since the Great Depression, and the numbers haven't stopped rising yet. It's hard to put into perspective and see how tirelessly healthcare workers are fighting to keep the spread of the virus at bay. All of this uncertainty in America leaves what is to come in the future a complete unknown, and the unknown is a pretty scary thing. Americans rely on knowing that the future ahead is a good one, so that we can continue living the American dream. But for the first time in a while, it's all up in the air. Americans are scared of the unknown because we do not know what it is and what's ahead of us. The only way to do that is to search for answers, and trust me, Americans have a lot of questions. I too had questions, so I contacted my federal senator, one of the ones in Washington, D.C., who helps make the big decisions. In doing this, I hope to find answers and attempt to help answer questions about when a sense of normalcy will be brought back to our lives, and in a way, get a sense of reassurance that all will be okay in the end. I knew that I had my questions, but I didn't want just one side. I wanted to know what everybody was thinking and what they had to ask, so I compiled a list of questions submitted to me by high schoolers from around the state of Illinois. This is the interview I conducted with my senator, consisting of questions that were submitted to me.
And now, Charlie Lay presents a one-on-one with Senator Dick Durbin.
I'm Senator Dick Durbin now from Lincoln, passed away the Senate committee asked directly. Thank you.
My name is Charlie Lay, and I'm here with a very special guest. He's the Democratic Whip, which is the second highest ranking Democrat in the Senate, and he's been a senator since 1996. Before we start, I'd like to give a big thank you to him for taking the time out of his schedule to join with us and talk to us. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois.
It's great to be with Grays Lake High School. I've got your list of questions here. They cover a lot of things. I could give you a long speech answering all these questions, but I'll try not to. I want to speak to the issues which are on your mind and do it kind of briefly.
Senator Durbin, what advice would you give to high schoolers who are looking to advance in a career in politics?
Well, you're in school, number one. Number two, I hope you're learning, and I believe you are. You ought to make sure that you're learning history. You see, things that have happened in the past often happen again in a different form. Let me give you an example. There's a book called The Great Influenza, written by John Barry, B-A-R-R-Y, and it tells the story of the Spanish influenza, which looked an awful lot like COVID-19, and it happened in the year 1918. It's a fascinating story, and several places in Illinois were right smack dab in the middle of this story. One of them is not too far away from where you're going to school, the Great Lakes Naval Training Station. It was started in 1905 by Teddy Roosevelt. It is now the place for training the sailors for our United States Navy. There's no other training facility for recruits in the United States. Back then, in 1918, we were in the middle of World War I. If you remember, 1914 and 1918 is how long that lasted. We were in it in 1918, and along came this influenza. And we didn't know much about it. What in the heck is happening? We've seen flu before, but all of a sudden, this is affecting a lot of people, and many are dying. Well, Great Lakes Naval Training Station was one of those areas that faced that kind of a challenge. And we find all across Illinois and across the Midwest, we learned the hard way that if a sailor had influenza, got on a boat, a ship, and went out to sea, he might infect everyone else on the ship, and then when they landed in a port, they would bring that infection into the cities. That's what happened in the city of Philadelphia in 1918. It was a terrible devastation with thousands of people dying because of the influenza at that moment.
Is there anything else students could do besides that?
I got started in high school in public speaking. I was encouraged by my older brother, and I had a teacher who said he would try to help me develop some skills at it. And it's probably one of the most important things I did in high school is to develop a comfort level of doing this, just looking at a camera, for example, speaking, or speaking to crowds. And in the course of my political career, I've been able to speak to a lot of crowds. So public speaking is important. History, public speaking, reading books, those are the things I'd recommend. And then let me say a word about politics. I got started in politics as an intern in the office of U.S. Senator, just shuffling papers, what interns do back in the day. And I volunteered for a campaign for this U.S. Senator. You can get into a campaign at virtually any age. It is an equal opportunity employer. Now, the first thing you may be asked to do is to pick up the empty pizza boxes at the headquarters, but eventually stick around. Things get better. Assignments get more serious. And if you stay long enough and you're good at it, you might find yourself running a campaign, which I did at an early age, or being a candidate yourself, or working for somebody who was elected as a candidate. So the political campaigns I found is an opportunity to get engaged in something that's exciting. The one thing about a political campaign, it's a lot like a baseball game. It's going to come to an end. There's going to be a winner and there's going to be a loser. There are a lot of things in life you're never quite sure whether you're a winner or loser. But that's one thing about politics that I like.
Senator, what is the U.S. doing to deal with this pandemic?
Well, we've got two challenges. The first challenge is COVID-19 virus, trying to find a way to reduce the infection rate, to make sure that we have treatments so people survive if they're diagnosed, and finally to come up with a vaccine that's safe and effective and protects us. We take all kinds of vaccines now. I do, and my kids and grandkids did as well, to protect them from things like measles, for example. Measles used to be a killer. It was so infectious and so dangerous, it was a killer. Then came a measles vaccine, and we started giving people protection against it. I believe we'll find a vaccine for COVID-19. The sooner the better. But it takes time to get one that is a safe and effective vaccine. Whether it's discovered in the United States, and I certainly hope it is, or found overseas, I want to make sure it's safe and effective and available. We only need billions, that's with a B, billions of vaccine shots for people all around the world to stop this COVID-19. So that's the first thing. That's the medical battle. And this idea of staying at home and wearing a mask, and I'll bet you don't know a lot of people who are wearing masks. Just remember, when you wear a mask outside, it isn't to protect you, it's to protect everybody around you. So when I wear a mask, I want to make sure that whatever's coming out of my face, whether it's a cough or a sneeze or little droplets that come out as I speak, isn't hurting somebody. That's why I'm wearing a mask. So when you don't wear a mask, it isn't because you're tough and brave. It's because you don't give that much of a care about the folks around you. Remember social distancing. 6 foot away from speaking to people. That's because the droplets usually don't get that far. So that's part of this distancing. It's not hard to do. You can put on your mask and sit in a chair 6 foot away. Outside is safer than inside, and you can protect others. If you care about other people in your family and outside your family, wearing a mask is not unreasonable. Some people say, I'm tired of it, I don't need it, it's not serious. The regular flu seasons, you know all about them. We have them every single year. Flu shots, regular flu shots, and so forth. We usually lose 34,000 Americans a year who die from regular flu. As I broadcast to you, we're up to nearly 100,000, almost 3 times the number of usual victims, and we're not finished yet. There are going to be more, sadly. So this is serious, and it's serious for people, the younger people who may be fighting cancer, for folks in their middle years who may have asthma, heart issues, diabetes, for older Americans who have compromised immune suppressive systems. So there's a lot of vulnerability out there. So we're learning how to deal with this. And it's tough. It's really an experiment in democracy, too. Americans don't like to be told what to do. We're pretty independent people. We value our liberty. We value our freedom, and we say so over and over again. And it's serious. That's who we are. Well, this is a case where we're all in this together. I have to give up some of my freedom and stay home so that I stay safe, my wife is safe, and we don't get anybody else infected if we turned out positive. Thank goodness we haven't so far. So those are all things part of it.
Senator, looking past the pandemic now, what will the U.S. look like and how will our lives be different?
Interesting question, because, I kind of reflect on this. I'm a handshaking politician. Will I ever be shaking hands again? Probably not this year. I don't think people are up for that, and I understand that. Secondly, what are we going to do about when it comes to preparing for the next pandemic? There'll be one someday. I hope it's 100 or 200 years from now, but there'll be one. Well, we need a stockpile of equipment going in. We didn't have one. And you can point fingers in every direction as why we didn't, but we should have done a lot better. Secondly, a lot of drugs that we use in the United States that are very important aren't made in the United States. So when China is our source of a major life-saving drug, and China decides to cut down on its trade with the United States, what are we going to do? Well, a bill I put in with a Republican senator asked the National Academy of Sciences to make sure that in the future, critical drugs, we either have a stockpile in the United States or we have the capacity to make it on our own if necessary. That's part of it as well. I think we also come to realize who's important in our lives. Who would have guessed that clerk in the grocery store turned out to be an essential employee? Well, you sure as heck know they are now, because when you need to buy the food for your family and take care of them, that clerk literally risked her life to ring up your purchases. So we need to think more seriously about people who are serving us, not just the healthcare heroes, but others who are serving us every single day. So I wish my folks and friends at Grays Lake the best. Sorry you can't be together for the school year, but I look forward to seeing you in not too distant future when we can get together. Thanks a lot.
To you as well, one big thank you to you, Senator. I thank you for joining us and answering our questions. It's greatly appreciated, and I know you have a busy schedule, so I appreciate it a lot. Thanks. Once again, I'd like to give a special thank you to Senator Durbin for giving his time and taking time out of his busy schedule to talk with me. I appreciate it greatly, and thank you for it. As we go forward in this COVID-inhabited world, remember to sanitize, wear a mask, and please, please, please spread peace and love. Thanks.
Thank you for watching, and please consider subscribing.